Welcome back, everybody, to an episode of Adrenaline Seek Outdoors. Today we've got a cool little episode for you, and it's going to be all about calling deer and communicating with deer. Right now it's November. We're right smack dab in the middle of the rut down here in Oklahoma. Deer are rutting, they're chasing does, they're fighting, and right now they're just really communicating a lot. So today I just kind of want to go over some of the basic calls that we like to use that we found that have worked, and we're just going to kind of talk about calling deer in general as a whole. This is going to be, great if you've a first-time hunter and you want to know how to call the deer. This is going to be a really good episode, and if you're an experienced hunter, been doing it a long time, I think you're going to pick up on some things too. That you may be able to learn. So really, when it comes to us here at Adrenaline Seek, we like to stick to three main types of calls, and really actually probably two, but I like to throw in a third, which we'll talk about. And when it comes to calling deer, I think deer communicate a lot more than what people think. I call a lot, especially on private land and public. If I feel like it's not pressured too much, I like to call a lot, especially with the grunt tube. I use this thing all the time. Can you overcall? Probably. Have I overcalled? Probably. But I like to use the fire out of these things. And so kind of let's start out with the time period. So early in the year, pre-rut, kind of like that October 10th to the end of November. I'm using, all three. I really don't use this one as much, but like I said, pre-rut, what I'm doing, I get in the stand and say I'm hunting in the morning. Kind of daybreak gets there, there's plenty of light. You want to be able to see, because you never know when you're going to call to a deer. He may step out in 30 seconds. So you want to make sure whenever you're calling the deer that you're ready, you're set up, and you're good to go, ready to shoot. That's a big tip. Make sure when you call, you're ready to go, because it can happen like that. So let's kind of talk about some of the calls that I like to use during that pre-rut time. During the pre-rut, when it comes to the grunt call, I like to keep it pretty simple, nothing super aggressive. Deer are communicating, but they're not getting super aggressive towards each other when it comes to bucks. So kind of like a little call sequence that I might do during the pre-rut, say like October 15th or something like that. I just let out some kind of just small, little grunts, just something like this, just. And then I may wait a couple seconds, I may wait a minute, then let out some more. Something like that. All that is doing is letting deer know that I can't see, and I'm blind calling when I do this. That's just letting deer know, like, hey, there's another deer over here. Maybe I need to come check it out. So I like to do that during the first part of the year, especially down here in Oklahoma. It's thick. You can't see a lot. We hunt a lot of thick timber. So there may be deer within, 50, 60 yards of me that I can't see. So I like to let out these little soft grunts. That way, I can maybe hear deer get up and start coming towards me, or, a deer hears that and it's kind of like, hey, what's going on over there? I'm gonna go check it out. So I do that, and then also during the first part of the year, and I'll do this early as October 2nd, the 3rd, 4th, especially that first week of October. If I get a good cold front, I will actually pick up the rattling antlers. I prefer to use this little pack rack, and the reason I choose this over traditional antlers, especially early season, is just it packs so small and nice. As y'all know, we do a lot of hanging hunts. I have a lot of gear, a lot of camera gear. So I like it. I like how small it is. I'm not having to pack a big set of antlers with me, and it's easy, it's quick, and I think it sounds pretty good, and I can make it sound the way that I want to. So early, that first week of October, I get a good cold front, and kind of throughout, early to mid-October, what I'm trying to resemble with the antlers you could say, is just really just kind of maybe two smaller bucks, just, you know, tickling the horns together. Just, they're not fighting, they're not trying to show any dominance, they're just kind of almost playing. And I've actually witnessed this, and my buddy has, where he killed a 160. He had two deer, two small bucks. It was October 2nd, and they're out. It's in the evening, it's prime time. And these two bucks, they just kind of start tickling antlers together. They're just sparring, they're not fighting. And you can just kind of barely hear that tick every now and again. And then this deer he's hunting, the 160, comes out, and you can tell he's come to check it out. He was like, I heard some deer fighting, what's going on? So I think deer are curious, and so that's why I like to do it early. Another example, me and Braden, when we were hunting a deer we called Lumpy, it's like October 6th, a good cold front comes in, I tickle the horns together, and we probably had a 2 or 3 year old, really nice 8-point. I mean, this deer comes in and is just looking. He's like, what's going on? Where are these two bucks at? And, you know, we could have shot him if we wanted to. Obviously, we're hunting the bigger deer. So I like to hit the horns together early. And all that's going to sound like for me, it's nothing super aggressive. It's just kind of real light rattling, and it kind of sounds something like this. And as you can hear there, it's not loud. It's not like I'm just banging these things together, just really going at it. It's just real light, and all I'm trying to resemble is tines just kind of touching. You know, there's no aggressiveness to it. And I'll do this, you know, this calling sequence of light rattling. I just call them tickling it together. I'll do this for, you know, maybe 30 seconds. I don't like to do it, you know, a minute, 2 minutes. I like to do it 30 seconds. And you know, when I rattle, if you've ever heard deer fight, it's not a constant just horns. It's not just like they're beating together the whole time. So I like to leave plenty of pauses in there. And this is kind of an example of that. You know, rattle, give it a pause. You see I'm pausing. And those pauses in there, if you've ever heard deer fight, it's like I said, it's not like they're just banging together and it's just horns all the time. Honestly, probably you hear the brush moving or the ground moving more than you actually hear their antlers, but you will hear their antlers. So I like to give them those pauses, and that is kind of my rattling sequence early, kind of like I said, 1st of October to mid-October. And then, so kind of as we get to late October, I think my personal opinion is late October, say like October 25th to like November 5th, I think that is the absolute best time to call in mature deer and bucks. The testosterone is rising. Deer are, you know, obviously they're broke up out of the bachelor groups, and they're excited. You know, the rut's coming, the testosterone is rising, and so you actually can get some pretty good, you know, aggressive fights during this time of the year. Like I said, October 25th to probably November 5th. So really kind of what my calling sequence looks like there. Starting with the grunt call, I'll get a little bit more aggressive. And that's going to kind of sound like something like this. As you can tell, that's a lot more of aggressive sounding call than, you know, what I would do early season. I've grunted in a lot of deer in this time period doing it like that, and it's kind of like a buck. You know, I imagine it like a buck's like, all right, you know, I'm ready. Like I'm ready to fight. Who else is? And it's kind of calling out another deer. And so that's kind of my grunt sequence that I like to use. You know, kind of that right there before the rut, or you know, maybe during the rut. And then, you know, if I see a deer, and that's blind calling, if I see a buck during that time period, I really I base my calling on the demeanor of the deer. If I feel like it's a big old mature deer that could kind of be a bully, I'll get a lot more aggressive with it. You know, it'll sound something like this. Like, that's an aggressive call, and I'm calling that to a big deer that I know I want to shoot, and that I feel like it's an old, mature deer. And that's kind of, you know, that's giving out a more aggressive call, especially if I feel like that deer's the dominant deer in the area. You bet, I'm calling to him hard. If it's a deer I really don't know, maybe a younger deer that I'm not sure, I probably won't go that aggressive with. A lot of times when calling to younger deer, or maybe not the most dominant deer in the area, you can actually kind of scare them off. Not saying they're going to blow and get out of the country, but they're going to kind of be like, oh, you know, there's a bigger deer, more dominant deer over there than me. I'm not going to go check it out. So I base a lot of my calling, when I'm calling actually to deer, that I can see on the demeanor of the deer and what I feel like the maturity of that animal is when it comes to grunting to deer. And then kind of like I said, right there before the rut, I'll hit the horns together a little bit harder. You know, and that'll kind of sound something like this. As you notice, I'm putting those pauses in there. And I'll probably do that. Sometimes I like to do it for a minute to 2 minutes. If it's really windy, I'll do it for, you know, a minute and a half to 2 minutes. And I think that you know, when it's windy, sound don't travel as well. Deer have a harder time locating exactly where that call's coming from. So when it's windy, I'll do that that sequence longer. If it's not as windy, you know, I may only do it 30, 45 seconds. So that's kind of, you know, as you notice, that rattling's more aggressive. It's not like, you know, deer trying to fight to the death, but it's like two bucks. They're kind of mad at each other, and they're kind of going at each other, but they're not trying to kill each other. So, you know, if you know boxing, you know, a good sparring match, you know, and kind of two guys get a little mad at each other, they start throwing some harder punches. That's kind of what I try to, you know, resemble that late October, early November time frame. And then, you know, it depends on the weather. If I feel like deer are really chasing hard, say, you know, November 5th, November 6th, somewhere in there, this is called a can. This is kind of an older call. A lot of people don't use them nowadays, or at least I don't see them using them. My stepdad has used this a ton, and it's caught in some really big deer, and I've heard of a lot of people using it. So kind of maybe towards, you know, that November 6th to the 10th time range, where you know, it's possible that does are in estrus that are ready to breed. I'll throw out, all this is an estrus bleat, and it just sounds something like this. And as you notice, it's not a loud call. So if it's windy, I really won't even bother doing it. But if it's calm, it's prime time, you know, and I'm not seeing any deer and I feel like I should, you know, I may hit one or two of those. That's all I do, is just hit, you know, an estrus bleat once or twice, and then I get ready. I've called a lot of deer in, and like I said, my stepdad I know has using this call. And so it's something that I still carry, and I still really like to use, you know, during the rut when does can be in estrus or in estrus. And same thing, I'll blind call with this, and then I'll also call the deer. If I see a buck and I grunt at him and I don't get a response, you bet I'm gonna pick up this can, give him one or two, give it a second, and then see how he responds to that. A lot of times, if they won't come to this, they will come to this. So you know, I really like this, and I still use this call a lot. So kind of as we get into, you know, the rut, it's hot and heavy. You know, maybe say during the lockdown where bucks are cruising, going from doe to doe, they're looking for that next doe to breed. I'm going to use this a lot. I'm going to estrus bleed a lot. I'm going to let out some really aggressive grunts, and then also kind of some tending grunts. I actually saw a video on this, and I've tried it. I actually grunted a deer in doing this, and it sounds something like this. And you know, I haven't done it a lot, but I have done it, and from what the research I've done is this is what bucks are doing right before they breed a doe, and it sounds kind of something like this. And you can hear it kind of just like a click. It's just like tick, 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 tick. That's all you got to do. And like I said, the research I've done, bucks do this a lot right before they're going to breed a doe. So during the lockdown, mid-November to late November, I'm going to be doing that a lot. What I'm trying to resemble there is that a buck is about to breed a doe, and for any bucks that are cruising that I can't see, whatever, that's letting them know, hey, there's some breeding going on. Maybe I need to go here and check it out, try to get this doe. And so I think deer are really responsive to that. And then I may do that. So I may let out an estrus bleat first, something like that, and then do that calling sequence. And that's like painting the picture of like, there's a buck, there's a doe, she's about to get bred. So any other bucks, if you want to try it, come on in. And that's kind of what I resemble there. And then kind of when I really like to rattle super aggressive is mid-November to late November. That's when I'm going to hit the horns together hard. I'm going to make it sound as loud, as mean as I can. Because bucks, they're fighting for breeding rights at that point. They're not just playing around, sparring. They're not just a little bit mad at each other. No, there's a doe and they want a breeder, and so they are getting after it. So I mean, I'll hit the horns together hard, and it kind of sounds something like this. I know it's going to be a little bit loud, but this is kind of my most aggressive rattling that I'll do. And I may do that, like I said, 1 to 2 minutes, and that's a super aggressive call. And actually, kind of sometimes during this time period, that mid-November to late November, I will actually carry horns into the stand, just because. And what I'll do, I'll carry 3. And I know some of y'all have probably seen that trick. And what you do, if you're hunting down a tree, you tie a string or paracord to 3 antlers and you drop it down. And you're picking it up and down, and those antlers are hitting together, but it's also hitting the ground and the brush. Sounds super, super realistic. It's kind of an inconvenience to carry 3 antlers into the woods, so that's why I don't do it until that late November. But I'll do that, and that works really well. Obviously there's kind of 2 main types of calling. Blind calling, whereas you don't see any deer, you don't know if there's a deer around or nothing, and then there's calling 2 deer. And I've kind of broke that down a little bit. I will say, when it comes to blind calling, you have to be pretty strategic about it. When you call to deer, especially old mature deer, a lot of times they're going to try to get downwind of the sound. And what they're trying to do, they're trying to scent check. Okay, like what's going on? Is there a doe in there? Is it just 2 bucks? So if your setup isn't great where deer can get downwind, it's a little bit risky. I still do it. It's a risk that I take. But be mindful of that deer will come in downwind of calling, and they do it a lot, especially old, mature, big deer do that. And then when it comes to blind calling too, like I said, do your sequence, whatever it is, and then get ready. So many times, I've made this mistake over and over and over. I'll call, whatever, get done. I'll sit there, a minute, 2 minutes, and then I don't see nothing. All right, get on my phone or, film something on the camera or whatever, and 5 minutes go by and here that deer comes, coming in, and I'm not ready. I gotta grab my bow, I gotta get my camera ready. So when you call, be patient. Deer aren't always gonna come charging in, running in when you call. Sometimes it may be 5, 10, 15, maybe even 20 minutes before these deer kind of make their way to that calling. Especially big deer, they're gonna be cautious about coming into calling, especially on pressured land like public, or if you hunt private where there's a lot of people that hunt around. Deer aren't just going to come running in there. They're going to be cautious about what they're coming into. And then late season, late season tough. It's kind of like early season. It's that bed to food pattern. And really, my calling late season and early season is really similar. I'll let out some good grunts, nothing too aggressive. Just kind of let, if any deer are passing by, let them know, like, hey, there's a deer over here. I really won't hit the estrus can late. Really, the only time I do this is the month of November is when I'm hitting the estrus can. I may light rattle late season, but nothing crazy. Like I said, in my opinion, it's the hardest bed to food pattern there is. They're coming off of the rut. They're looking for food. So I don't think deer are super attentive to calling late season, but it can work, and I still let out some grunts and stuff here and there. Deer grunt a lot. I've heard a ton of does and fawns grunt to each other, and then a lot of times, I don't know if y'all have ever heard a buck chasing a doe. It kind of sounds like that ticking. It kind of sounds like it's almost like every step they take, they're grunting. So I'll do that during the month of November. But yeah, so that's kind of our calling sequences that we like to do. You know, we'll mix it up. We'll combine some of these. Like I said, you know, I combine the estrus bleat with the tending grunt. That's what I really like to do. I'll let out some aggressive grunts, and then I'll hit the horns together, you know, maybe 2 or 3 minutes later. And then, you know, really you can mix a decoy in with this. We don't decoy hunt very much, but when you do, man, you can really have some good sits, you know, during the month of November with, you know, combining calling and a decoy. I'm not going to go into decoy hunting and the setup and all that because I really don't know. I haven't done it a ton. But kind of when it comes to calling deer, that's our 3 main deals. Kind of a side note, one thing that I'll do too, if it's calm and I know deer can hear, you know, if I'm in my tree and I have a branch, I'll rub on it and move the leaves around and stuff. And what I'm trying to resemble there is, you know, a deer rubbing his antlers in the tree, maybe making a scrape. That's another kind of little calling tip that I'll do, or calling sequence that I'll do, maybe with some light grunts, something like that. But really, when it comes to calling deer, that's what we use. I call a lot. I don't use a bunch of different calls, but this is what I use, and I do it a lot, and I found that that's where it works for me. These 3 things right here, that's what works, and so that's why I stick with it. If you have any questions over, you know, different things, then be sure to let us know. But yeah, this is kind of our calling sequences that we like to do. I've called a lot of deer in doing it, and it works well. You know, different parts of the country, deer are going to have different responses to things, but this is what works for here in Oklahoma for us, and I like it, and it's been very, very successful for me. So we appreciate you watching. If you have any questions, be sure to leave them in the comments. You know, we'll answer anything we can. We're by no means, or myself, no means expert on this. This is just kind of a trial and error, you know, solution that I came up with that works, and that's why I use it. So thank you guys for watching. Until next time, keep seeking.